There are times that I'm searching for things that I think will be a good fit for the channel, only to then say, what the hell am I watching here? And oftentimes they seem like fun things to talk about, but it's not like I have anywhere to fit them. So I've collected 10 of them here. 10 movies that I sat there and watched with my jaw on the floor, completely unable to process what I was seeing. So prepare your eyeballs, because we're headed into some flicks that I guarantee that as I list them off, you'll join me in simply saying, what the hell? Number 10. Well, here goes Fungicide from 2002, which has this mad scientist here, and he's working on some sort of secret formula, and he lives in his parents' basement. But then they decide to make their son visit a bed and breakfast with a woman who has psychic flashes. And then there's this other guy here too.
I like to think of this as a nice alternative place where people can just get together and give it to each other.
What?
I'm sorry, did that come out the wrong way?
And he has to feel at home by posting framed photos of himself up. And this guy, and you know, one of my favorite things about low budget movies is how they pull off car crashes. And this is how they do it here.
Wow.
And when Silas gets there, he drops his secret formula, spilling it. It gets on some mushrooms, and then there's this guy who I guess is on some sort of military survival reality show. His cameraman is killed and dragged off by something, and it turns out to be killer mushrooms, and here they are. Man! And this one was by David West Cabbage, infamous director of Suburban Sasquatch, and this was actually his very first film. And honestly, it seems to show a good deal more self-awareness than Sasquatch did. This really feels like someone knowing they're making a trash monster movie and sort of leaning into it. Like, there's this shot of it eating the cameraman, and I think this is supposed to be the guy's dead body. And there's really no attempts to hide that it's a dummy, and it's glorious. Like, this is made of paper mache, and it's just here in the movie pretending to be a person. But then things take a turn for the bizarre and the amazing when a human-sized mushroom crashes into the house, and holy crap, look at this.
It's only a mushroom.
And how can I not be in love with this? And then things get really low rent CGI, and that's a little less cute, but it's still pretty hysterical. Like hear me out. There's a scene in which a cheap CG mushroom vomits out a cheap CG skeleton. And I mean, it has a scene where the hippie chick who owns the place transforms into a mushroom fighter and says this.
Let's kick some fungus.
Have I sold you on this yet? And this is absolutely someone making a film in their backyard with their friends and their available means, even getting his own parents to play the parents in the opening. And I know that you're gonna look at this and say, this looks horrible, but hot damn, I was amused and loved the low budget charm. This is a movie made for me, and it's silly and cheap and it's weird, but it's not that weird. So let's go deeper. Number 9. For this one, we're going back to 1990 and checking out the bizarro Baby Blood. And buckle up for this one. It starts with a group of lions and tigers being transported, and they're taken to a circus where Yanka works, and she's pretty regularly abused. One night, one of the animals explodes out from the inside, and it's a little parasite thing that creeps into Yanka's bed and then enters her body in the expected manner. She immediately starts noticing changes in her body and realizes that she's pregnant, so she takes off. Her boyfriend tracks her down and she immediately kills him. And it's discovered that her baby, or what she thinks is her baby, is talking to her and asking for the blood.
If you refuse to feed me the blood of the man.
Unsure of what to do, she attempts suicide and ends up wandering, and Weirdly, there's a poster on a building for Baby Blood 2, so the movie is advertising its own sequel. She meets up with men and kills them, drinking the blood for the baby, and it's pretty weird. And the work of director Alain Robach, who had done one previous film but realized that he wanted to do something that felt like a throwback to classic B movies. At first, he had trouble getting funding for it, but managed to get it off the ground, and it includes a few cameos by notable French filmmakers. One of them was Jacques Audiard, who directed the wacky talkie dog film Baxter, and not only does the director appear, but so does Baxter. It was actually pretty acclaimed at the time and won festival awards, and here's the strangest part of this one. In the original French version, Robach himself voices the baby and uses a sort of baby voice for it. But when it was released in the United States, they did a dubbed version. Now, there's no sort of official confirmation of this, and it's not in the film's credits or anything. But reportedly, the voice of the baby in the dub is by Gary Oldman.
Oh, does that hurt?
It's not bad yet. You'll be able to get back.
I'll find a way.
This was right around the time that his star really started to rise, and it's unclear how he became involved in this, if he even did. Granted, it does kind of sound like him, but the voice of the baby is way more sinister and creepy, definitely more so than the French version. It's a pretty low-key flick that's pretty good, and yeah, fairly weird, and actually got a very belated sequel in 2008 called Lady Blood, with Emmanuel Escuro returning to the role of Yanka and Robach returning to write the script, although he did not direct. Number 8. Let's crank up that weird level a bit as we go to 1992's Hell Roller, which I'm sure will be a very nuanced and subtle film. It begins on Hollywood Boulevard, and I can guarantee you that they didn't have a permit to film, and these people here have absolutely no clue that they're in a movie called Hell Roller. We're introduced to Eugene, who's in a wheelchair, and his mother is none other than Mary Woronov, and she reveals that she's not his real mother, and his mom, are you ready for this, was a prostitute, and when she was a baby, she was attacked by conjoined twins, and when they were unable to have their way with her, they injured baby Eugene, causing him to need a chair. Johnny Legend is in this too, and okay, Eugene finds the twins, and not only did they not age a day in the 30 years or whatever, because Eugene is not a young man, but not only did they not age, but they're wearing the same clothing. So, when Gene is kicked out of a gym, he enlists the help of Donald and kills the owner. And I don't think I've mentioned it all by now, but this is all shot on video. And when I say video, I mean one of those home camcorders, and the quality is very low. But then, just when you're thinking this is made for $10, consider that they had money to get Mary Woronov earlier, and then Michelle Bauer is here too. And he kills her and goes on a spree, and then 80s adult film star Hypatia Lee shows up, and then there's a quick role for Elizabeth Catane. So I'm assuming that whatever money that they had for this one went to hiring the talent. But not all of the talent, since our leads are pretty horrible. And here's the weird backstory here, because not only is the content of this one strange, but so is the behind-the-scenes drama. The character of Donald in this one is portrayed as being incredibly dumb, and once a director of some notoriety, and it's supposed to be obscure movie creator Donald Farmer, who gave us Vampire Cop and of course Shark Exorcist. I guess Gary Levinson, this film's director, had a real beef with him to put this little parody in there. But then, later, right before the movie was released, Farmer made a documentary called Invasion of the Scream Queens and talked about Michelle Bauer. So, on the cover for the documentary, Farmer used a picture of her from Hell Roller. So, Levinson took him to court. But not just any court, the People's Court, with Judge Wapner presiding. Since Levinson couldn't really detail how much damage that the use represented, he found in favor of Farmer, making Hellroller a loser all around. And yeah, if you thought it was weird as I described so far, the ending has Eugene having a man develop a secret formula to transform anyone who drinks it into a homeless person. Like their clothing changes and everything. Number 7. Well, if that one seemed weird and sleazy, then how about 1994's LA AIDS Jabber? Yes, that's what it's called. Again, I'm expecting sensitivity and nuance and more than a little similarity to Hellroller. Like, first of all, like that one, it's shot on video. And then there's Jeff here, and he's told that he's diagnosed not of being HIV positive, but having full-blown AIDS. He takes it really well.
I got AIDS. AIDS! I got AIDS, okay? AIDS.
He tries to figure out exactly where he contracted it from, and also just decides to get his revenge on people. He meets up with a prostitute he was with before, and injects her with his blood.
Welcome to the AIDS Card Carrying Club.
And this whole thing is based on an old urban legend that used to go around that used that exact phrase. The story was about a man meeting a lovely woman out at a bar and convinced to go home and have unprotected sex with her, only to find her gone in the morning with a message on the mirror or wall saying either "Welcome to the AIDS Club," "Welcome to the world of HIV," or whatever. This is basically an amplified version of that. And here's a bit of weirdness, because the director's name is Drew Godaris, and this is the only thing he's directed, and he also wrote it. But he was an actor in a handful of B movies, and the most notable role he had is Uncle Anwar in the hilarious Blood Diner. This actually appears to be his final credit in the industry at all, so he went out on LA AIDS Jabber. Jeff continues his attacks on people, injecting them with his blood, and reports start to spread. But here's where I tell you that after the insane and over-the-top setup about what this film is about, it kind of gets boring as it focuses more on the investigation into finding Jeff, and like him visiting a fortune teller, robbing an old lady, and this one was pretty rare for a while and sort of an obscurity of the 90s, but it recently resurfaced and was given a shiny new transfer and is pretty easily available. Number 6. About as far from the feeling of that one as we can get is 2009's Tainted Light. Yes, Tainted Light. That's the title. Clearly a parody of Twilight. I'm telling you up front that this is another Chris Seaver jammer, and I've featured a number of his movies in the past, and what can I say? I find them awful and charming. And yeah, it's silly.
My mother was tragically taken from me recently due to an unfortunate case of committing suicide disease.
And we meet Stella here, and she goes to see her dad, who's basically the same age as her, but has this convincing mustache. Stella reunites with old friend Jack and his buddies, who are an assortment of Seaver regulars. And here's the thing, I've never seen Twilight, so I don't really know what it's satirizing here. Like, I'm assuming this is similar to the story there, but I don't really know. I don't have this thing against Twilight like I think that people have. Like, if you dig it, then more power to you. But it's definitely not geared towards me. There's a handsome fella named Edgar, and I do know that he's supposed to be the vampire Edward. And of course, there's a character named Jacques de Queef, who leaves the scene like this.
May your ears shine on through the cornfields of Atlantis.
Ah, Jock.
But there's some villainous vampires, and of course a romantic storyline with Edgar and Stella here, just with a ton of scatological humor thrown in there as per Seaver's usual. And I have to admit, there might be more laughs in this if I were more familiar with the source material, but I think that's sort of my bar with parody. Like, if it's still funny and works with no knowledge of what it's goofing on, then it's a success. Like think of Young Frankenstein. Although, yeah, as opposed to sparkling in the sunlight, Edgar shoots bubbles from his crotch, and I suppose It's pretty silly, but it's not quite as wacky as you would hope that a movie called freaking Tainted Light would be. I'm not going to say that I didn't get some chuckles out of it, but I usually like Seaver's movies quite a bit, and this one fell a touch short. Number 5. This one. Yeah, this one. Oh, okay. This is 1989's Disgusting Space Worms Eat Everyone. True to the title, we have a space worm right away, and it's pretty disgusting, so we're pretty solid on title accuracy at this point. So they teleport down to Earth, end up in a bag of cocaine, and are snorted by a rich jerk. And then there's this guy driving for a while, and he picks up a girl, and they drive for a while, and then Ray gets a job from a guy, although it's a bit hard to figure out exactly what it's about because the sound recording is pretty iffy.
Spit it out. Ziegler thinks a lot would be real interested in how you spent your summer in '84. When Ziegler says jump.
I think he's a private eye, and he's on the case, and the guy he's tracking is shot with either a silencer or a space ray. Meanwhile, the space worms attack other people, and yeah, as promised, they start to eat everyone. There's a particularly fun one where they fill up a bathroom light and explode it, and things get weirder when, much like Night of the Creeps, the worm-infested victims get up like zombies. And then there's more driving, lots more driving. And this weirdness was served up by George Keller, and this appears to be his only credit and only work in the film industry. And one of the oddball things here is that there was a different film from 5 years prior, from Germany, called Terror of the Disgusting Space Worms from Outer Space. It's pretty unclear if this was intended as some sort of follow-up, and in fact, there's not a whole lot of information about this one out there, so it's just a weird little mystery. A mystery that straight up just stops in the middle for a couple of people to read poetry. There doesn't seem to be any reason for this, it just does. It's an entire 3-minute sequence in which poetry is read directly to the camera in a monotone manner with terrible sound quality that is not easy to get through.
Your restless soul divinely was pledged eternal life. It ripens with the seasons, defeats your futile strife.
And yeah, it's pretty crappy and fairly strange, although I wish it were weirder and didn't spend so much time showing us people behind the wheel of their cars. Number 4. This next little oddity is going to take us to China with 1987's Child of Peach. And we're immediately told about a secret world atop a mountain called the Peach Garden. And it has guardian angels in the form of tiny dog who can become a dog, tiny monkey who can become a monkey, and tiny cock. They become a rooster. What did you think? There's also a human couple there with a baby boy, and dad has some cool powers. And within the first 5 minutes, we're not only given all of this information, but we also see the evil King Devil, who shows up to steal their magic sword and cause chaos. To save their son, they put the baby into a giant peach and send him away. And I guess there's a random ghost girl. Then there's an older couple who can't have a child of their own, and they're hoping to get pregnant, but they say that they're 70? I guess keep those dreams alive. They discover the peach, which pees on the old lady and then gropes the old man's butt. And yeah, I told you this was weird. But yeah, the peach opens up and the baby is inside, and they decide to take it as their own. They rudely don't name the baby James and just call it Peach Kid. And a world not quite Earth faces peril, and a couple send away their son in a strange craft to save it, and it's adopted by an older couple unable to have their own children, so they raise it themselves even though it seems to have otherworldly powers. That is a truly original plot that I have not heard before. There's then this evil witch who destroys the village, so to speed things up, the little ghost fairy girl speeds up Peach Kid's growth and his powers increase. And I get the idea that this is meant to be a kid's movie, but it also appears to be something that drugs are very necessary for. So I guess that the target market was kids on drugs? And this is sort of an adaptation of the Japanese folktale about Momotaro, and the story is hundreds of years old, and the aspect of a peach coming down and giving the baby to the elderly couple is a part of it, so I guess it's hard to complain that it's ripped off from Superman, although the presentation certainly is. And there was even a sequel to this one called Magic of Spell. But this is crazy fun and silly, and really, what kids movie do you know that has one of the villains getting their head violently exploded, and the heroes taking on the form of giant naked peach puppet? Number 3. Alright, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts with 1997's Love God. And it had Tromeo, who is institutionalized and has something called compulsive reading disorder, which gives him an uncontrollable urge to read and then destroy the written word. And then there's Kathleen, who thinks that she's Kali and is also a prostitute. But then there's also an intestinal parasite on the loose in the sewers, and LaRue's doctor is on the hunt for it. And they drop him off at an apartment complex with an assortment of weird inhabitants. His nurse is Deputy Trudy Weigel, and I want to say that this is an early role, but this was post The State, so Carrie Kenny was at least a little known at this point. So the parasite thing ingests you and mutates you on the evolutionary scale, and you turn into some sort of creature. And these things are wild and pretty gross, and these fun puppet creations. LaRue tries to adjust to life again and forms a sort of relationship with the silent Helen, and this film was sort of a lost treasure for me for a long time. Before it came out, there was an article about it in Fangoria, and it had pictures of the practical creatures. And I was pretty into oddball flicks at the time, and this looked like it was going to have a similar chaotic vibe to something like Freaked, and I loved Romeo and Juliet, so the fact that Will Keenan was in it made it look like something up my alley. But then, it just never came out. And I looked, and I was sort of in the bootleg VHS world back at this point, and traded tapes with a couple of guys, and looked in that realm, but no one ever had it. It just didn't seem to exist, and the only evidence I had that it was a real thing was that Fangoria article. So I wasn't even sure if it was ever completed. But then, a few years ago, it just showed up, and I got my hands on it, and it was every bit as bizarre as I could have hoped. And it's pretty strange consistently throughout, as there's stabbings and more creatures. And the director was Frank Grow, and this was basically his only gig in that field, except for a short and a documentary about Jewel. But he seems to work pretty consistently as an editor for a number of TV shows, including a lot of reality TV, which seems appropriate given Love God's very frenetic editing style. It's pretty out there, and I will say that the plot basically wanders a bit in the middle, and it does sort of seem to lose track of what it's trying to do, but it's pretty fun and an interesting use of limited resources to make it seem like a bigger budget than it really is, and absolutely insane. Number 2. You wanted weird? It's gonna get weird with 1999's The Item. The opening shows us someone stitching something like a doll together, and there's a carload of low-level crooks because this was still in the whole Tarantino, every movie has to have some smooth-talking, pop culture-dropping gangsters in their film. They're hired to meet with Dr. Odie here and pick up an item that they're told is a monkey. But when they open the box, it is not. Things go wrong when Odie decides he doesn't want to sell, so they have to kill him. And again, like quite a few of the movies on this list, it's shot on video and was very clearly done on a low budget. The crooks then go back to their hideout and decide to open the box and take a peek, and there's a worm-like thing inside. And this guy touches it and then licks his fingers, as you do. One of the girlfriends has a bunch of friends stop by and they see the item, so they kill them and chase them, and this is the way it's portrayed. Which leads to shootouts where people are standing directly across from each other, and yeah, this is weird. Like watch this. But then things get weird when the case goes bananas and the thing inside wakes up and it's this thing, whatever this is. It looks sort of phallic and has these weird non-eyes, and then it starts talking to them. He convinces the guy named Fatty to just go shoot up the place, and I guess manages to shoot all of the glasses on the table, yet not hit the people sitting right behind those glasses. He then starts whispering to all of them and get them to go insane and kill each other or themselves, including hallucinations. And this wackiness is from Dan Clark. And what a weird anomaly, because it's a strange, almost cartoonish kind of film with the exaggerated stylings and sound and stuff. And that might be appropriate since Clark mostly works in animation, but oddly, mostly kids animation. His filmography is mostly writing and directing for kids' cartoons and shows, including Yo Gabba Gabba. And part of me wonders if he went to an interview for the job and they were like, yeah, we're doing a Mr. Potato Head TV show. Real thing, by the way. And we need a writer. What makes you qualified? And then he showed them this movie and they're like, yup, perfect. And you're watching this and there's a period where it seems like it's trying to be normal for a little while and is going for normal movie status. And then it just says, nah, one of our characters is going to have a sex scene with the worm thing. Number 1. Our Pinnacle of Strange here is 1997's Tale from the Quad-Dead Zone. And yeah, strap in. The opening theme song gives you an idea about what you're going to experience. And okay, we have a woman who has a ghost son, and she's gonna read him a story. And he requests a book called Tales from the Quad-Dead Zone, and narrates the story, and her voice mixes with the audio of the tale, and I can't tell what anyone is saying.
A way of life for this poor family. One day, on a hot summer evening,
and of course, it's all shot on camcorder. The first story is called Food for ? It has a family that is extremely poor, and they don't have enough food to go around, and they compete for it. But one night, one of them goes mad and shoots some family members. But everyone seems happy since there's more food now. But then we see that the rest of the family is also killed, or went into the witness protection program. Yeah, that's how they ended it.
That was a strange tale.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. Bobby wants another story, so he gets one called The Brothers, and it's about two brothers who hated each other for their whole lives. And when one of them dies, the other steals his body from the funeral home to dress it as a clown. And this film was infamous for a while. The director is Chester Novell Turner, director of the classic Black Devil Doll from Hell, and this was his direct follow-up to that one. Shirley L. Jones, the star of Black Devil Doll, is here as Bobby's mother, and Novell first released this one on his own, on VHS, with a pressing of around 100 copies. Almost all of those original copies are thought to be lost, and the remaining ones are very rare collector's items, and one sold for $2,000 on eBay. It's just over an hour and was made for what appears to be around $20, and it's just insane. There's really no story to it at all. It's just people in rooms talking with poor audio quality, and eventually has zombie clowns, and ends with the wraparound story with Bobby's abusive dad. And this one is just bananas. It's like the pinnacle of low-budget filmmaking and DIY, and just using what you have to still just get something made. If you like truly weird filmmaking, this one is a must-see. So there you have it, 10 movies that will just leave you scratching your head and saying, what the hell did I just watch? Yeah, and this list ranges from the fairly normal with a couple of weird quirks to just straight up non-stop bizarreness from beginning to end. And there was a lot of fun here. I think for the most part, I enjoyed watching these. Even the ones that were pretty bad, they were all pretty entertaining. I don't think that there's anything on this list that I was just like, why did I hated every minute of that. They're all fairly entertaining. Yeah, I would check some of these out if you like this particular kind of thing. If you've heard of these, let me know down below in the comments. If I've interested you in any of these, tell me which ones you want to see down below. If you like this video, hit like. If you like what you see on this channel, hit subscribe. If you think about it, go to patreon.com/movietimelines and you can subscribe to this channel. I'd appreciate that. But you can also just keep on watching this channel and these videos. I appreciate that as well. And I'll see you very shortly for another great one. Thanks a lot, guys, and bye-bye.